Many educational institutions and just about every school website will tell you that they're preparing young people for a daunting, fast-changing world. Now, this discourse can get quite carried away. The jobs of the future do not exist yet. Children will change jobs many times in the future. Much of what we're learning in schools should be rethought because of this and because of that. Popular videos on this theme are Ken Robinson's now aging Changing Paradigms speech, 14 million views on YouTube when I last checked, and the Shift Happens video. In fact, I've been made to sit through Shift Happens more than once. It consists of racy infographics, bright colors, bite-sized dramatic statements about the chaos of the future against an action movie soundtrack. It's all very melodramatic, sensationalist, and if you ask me, pretty shallow. A point that many are so keen to make is that the way children will cope with the future is through skills. 21st century skills, or the 4 C's of creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. I suppose we could add to this entrepreneurship, digital literacy, leadership. The idea is, roughly speaking, that in the future these skills will be more important than knowledge itself. Educational gurus such as Sugata Mitra and institutions such as the British Association of Teachers and Lecturers claim that skills are more important than knowledge. Here are some examples of this discourse. The world no longer rewards people for what they know. Search engines can do that. Knowledge is changing so fast, we cannot give young people what they will need to know because we do not know what it will be. Here's another one. Demand in the workplace for routine cognitive skills based on easily digestible knowledge like list of kings and queens is in decline, as these tasks are automated and outsourced. The future lies in problem solving and interpersonal skills. But is this true? Are skills really more important than knowledge? Well, since we obviously don't know what the future will bring, it's all completely hypothetical. And we shouldn't think that the history of humanity will suddenly cease to be important. On the contrary, the past is the one thing we can be certain will remain stable. Consider this quotation from Larry Sanger, co-founder of Wikipedia. At 17, he says it was much better for him to learn US history than WordPerfect and BASIC, because what he learnt about history will remain more or less the same, subject to a few corrections, whereas skills in WordPerfect and BASIC are no longer needed. We must teach our students to appreciate the past, for it is this that will help them understand the present, and it is this that will empower them for the future. If we are to have critical thinkers in the 21st century, then the first step is knowing what there is to be critical about, to have an informed opinion. Because the more you know about something, the more you can think about it critically. The more in control you are of your choices, the greater your potential agency. Knowledge is power. We need to challenge ourselves and our students with knowledge of the politics and the history of the world that explain the modern predicament we're in, with its tensions. We need to know about colonization, decolonization, the creation of the State of Israel, American foreign policy, and many more things. Of course, we want our students to be critical thinkers. The point is that the way to these skills is through knowledge. We must empower our students with outstanding levels of literacy, numeracy, scientific, and general knowledge. You cannot be a seriously skilled person at anything if you don't know a lot. To create something powerful, you need more than imagination. You need technique. You need experience. To be a critical thinker, you must substantiate your point with accurate, factual information. To have good communication skills, you must know how to master a language. The research on this is overwhelming. Hirsch, Marzano, Glaser, Pellegrino, Chodowski, the 2014 Sutton Trust, to mention just a few, all point to the importance of mastery of content for better understanding and better teaching. So before we start talking about marketplace skills, what we need to do is lead our students towards mastery. And what does it take to master something? It takes practice, up to 10,000 hours of deliberate practice at that, meaning that you repeat areas of weakness until they become strengths. It also takes repetition. We know from neuroscience that dendrites are strengthened through repetition. And we've known since 1885, at least, that spaced repetition allows memory to consolidate. Repetition and practice. Not things you hear much in the excitable 21st century skills pitch. Yet, consider some of the most skilled people in the 20th century and what kind of education got them to their level of competence. Winston Churchill, possibly the greatest speechmaker of the 20th century, failed English twice, and therefore, in his words, through 3 years of repetition of the rules of grammar, got into his bones the essential structure of the ordinary British sentence. Malcolm X, an extraordinarily eloquent man, learnt English by copying the entire dictionary while in prison. He estimates that he wrote about 1 million words. Problem solving is a favorite with 21st century skills gurus. But what do we actually know about problem solving? Chase and Simon did a famous experiment back in 1973 to show conclusively how chess experts have mastered and learnt off by heart hundreds and hundreds of configurations. Chess experts are not standalone critical thinkers. They know a huge amount from experience. The same has been confirmed in more academic subjects like physics, where participants with knowledge and theory of physics solve problems correctly, whereas participants without knowledge and without theory solve them in intuitive and erroneous ways. So to say that we're doing problem solving will not mean much if students haven't learnt, and learnt well, the subject matter that they'll be activating to solve the problems. Now, this doesn't mean that we should stop doing problem solving. Of course, we should carry on. It means that we need to make sure that we're building up the core knowledge for them to solve problems and solve them well. An essential part of knowledge is about knowing other people's culture and history and knowing it well. Empathy and respect will not come from ignorance. I talk about this in my study of prejudice. The study of culture can go further than Europe and America too. Consider what we can learn about sustainability by studying indigenous knowledge systems that teach us deep respect for nature, such as the Aboriginal reverence for the land, or the Yanomami people of Amazonia, who only take from the forest what they need to survive, or the San people of Southern Africa, over 20,000 years old, who do not waste a morsel of food, showing deep respect for natural resources. We must ensure that our students empower themselves with knowledge, deep knowledge, both declarative and procedural. For the searing wounds that fester in this globalized, unsustainable economy, this fascistic, neoliberal cataclysm that we're seeing surge right before us, does not stem from a lack of creativity or from a lack of problem solving. It stems from ignorance. Ignorance of other people. Ignorance of the past. Ignorance when it comes to knowing which decisions to take and which road to follow. Ultimately, ignorance of what is right and what is wrong.